podcast is part of the Blueberry Network. Blueberry.com is where listeners and podcasters come together. Check it out at blueberrywithnoease.com.
So the Earbud U podcast, while fun to put together, doesn't run for free. And while we're happy to be a new member of the Blueberry Network, we'd like you, our faithful listeners, to do something for us. If you're thinking about engaging with podcasting either now or in the future, and you're stuck on a hosting company, Blueberry is for you. Look, there are a lot of podcast distribution companies out there that are going to make you a lot of promises. But Blueberry offers 3 things that made it my go-to when starting the Earbud U podcast. Number 1, convenience. With the PowerPress plugin and WordPress integration, it works with around 90% of all websites out there. Number 2, optimization. Yeah, it took me a while to accept that Apple and iTunes pretty much rule the roost when it comes to podcast distribution. But after I came to that realization, Blueberry was great at making everything very, very easy. Number 3, publishing and distribution is simple. Look, I have a lot of stuff going on in my life. I design corporate trainings, I give speeches, I write blog posts, and occasionally I get to see Mrs. Earbud U and the kids. But with Blueberry, publishing my podcast was done and over in 3 easy steps. No muss, no fuss, no bother. Look, head on over to blueberry.com, no ease, and type in the promo code earbud_u, and they'll give you a month of hosting service for free on me. You can't beat that deal with a stick. That's blueberry.com, no ease, and type in the promo code earbud_u. And now, on with the show. As an entrepreneur, the one thing that I struggle the most with, right along with everything else, the mundane day-to-day stuff, as well as the things that have to just get done, is the word no. Welcome to the show. This is Earbud U, Season 2, Episode 2. So, recently, I've been sitting in a 10-week leadership class that's been provided through my church. And if you ever have an opportunity to attend a leadership class of any kind, I suggest that you do it. Learning about how to be a leader and learning about all the things that go into being a leader are great things for anybody to learn. I don't care what level you are at in an organization or an institution. I mean, we live in a country where everybody believes that they can be a leader, but not everybody has the skills to be a leader or a follower. Anyway, some of the topics that are covered in this 10-week leadership class from my church include stewardship, discipleship, working with others, and team development, and of course management, and that's all being covered. Now, one evening, I asked the instructor a very salient question, and we're studying a book, and it's a great book. Or not great book, depending upon who you're asking. And by the way, I'm taking this class with my wife, and so my wife is not a big fan of the book, as perhaps other people are in the class. And I have mixed feelings about it myself, and we'll talk more about that later. But I asked the instructor, as a result of all of this book reading that we're doing and understanding that we're doing about leadership, how do you say no effectively? Now, I'm a person who believes in experiences, and I see tremendous potential in other people. But the thing that I've struggled with for years is seeing the potential in other people that they inherently don't see in themselves. And then once I see that potential, I'm the kind of person who pushes them inexorably and never-endingly towards the excellence that I think they need to achieve. Note, I said the word I a lot in there, okay? And after many years and a lot of trial and error, and I'm still discovering this, but I discovered why, that model of pushing people after you discover their inexorable, inherent leadership capabilities is a horrible model. and we'll get back to that in a minute. But first, so there are two kinds of leadership, just like there are two kinds of power. The first kind of power and the one kind of leadership is the one that I just described, where you find the potential in somebody and you push them inexorably towards accomplishing what you can see inside of them. The other kind of leadership is the kind that's built around serving your followers and allowing them the space to live out their potential in their own way. Our guest today on the show, Chris Strub, sort of exemplifies that second model of leadership, serving your followers and allowing them the space to live out their potential while also serving yourself. Now, he has a compelling personal story and a compelling journey, and he went on a bit of a road trip and took a break from his life to find out something about himself. Now, I've been a fan of his for full years, and full disclosure, we used to work together before Chris was anybody, but now he's blowing up, and you'll get to hear why, and you'll get to hear how he basically rebuilt himself in a mode of leadership that's really about going forth and pushing boundaries in himself and following himself. So he's both leading and following himself. So I hope you enjoy the interview. I hope you enjoy my brief meditations, I guess, such as it were, on leadership. And, well then, that's it. Let's get into it.
Hey, before we get started, I listened to most of the Jared Campbell thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how recently you did that one. I found the volume levels were a little low for iPhone digestion.
Right. Yeah. I've been getting a lot of that feedback from folks.
Wanting higher. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been getting that a lot from folks, and I need to change I worked on the volume through. It actually gets better the further you go into the season. But yeah, those first two were rough because I was actually recording them in a studio, and the guys didn't have the volume levels right. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Trust me, it gets better as you go through the seasons and you go to other ones. But yeah, that was a source of frustration, and it still is. I'm still sort of tweaking that. So.
Okay. Well, you sound great now.
So. Yeah, so that's good. Awesome.
Perfect.
All right. So 3, 2, 1. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Earbud U, Season 2, Episode number 3. Get your knowledge on through your earbuds. Our special guest for our show today is Chris Strub, traveler, darer, entrepreneur, social media marketer, budding visionary, and author. Chris has taken on some risks in his lifetime so far and has reaped the benefits from them. He's created an experience that I think personifies the modern millennial experience and potentially even the post-millennial experience. Chris is positive, but also authentic, and I think one of the forward voices of his generation. He has a compelling personal story and a compelling journey that I know he'll want to talk about. Now, full disclosure on this episode of Earbud U, we are personal friends and associates, both within and without of the noisy social media space that swirls around not only Chris but also myself. So, with that, welcome to Earbud U, Chris.
Jesan, it's great to talk to you, buddy. How are you?
Good. So, everything should be awesome and good. Good strong signal today coming through on the old internets there, so that's always a good sign.
Yes, sir. I am live from Greenville, South Carolina. It's absolutely gorgeous here today. So just a wonderful, perfect day here.
What is the temperature in Greenville, South Carolina?
Well, today it's about 72 degrees.
Okay.
There's some high clouds. We're looking at 81 tomorrow, so maybe we'll get in a little golf tomorrow afternoon. We'll see. I mean, it's just outstanding. It's just a gorgeous day that makes you wonderful how beautiful life can be. Well,
good. And here in upstate New York, it is sunny and 35. So,
so at least it's not snowing.
At least it's not snowing. That is the at least. That is the at least. All right. Well, let's get into the interview here. So, for Earbud U listeners, Chris, why don't you tell us what it is that you do exactly?
Sure. Well, I think I'm a guest on Earbud U today, not because of my current vocation, but because some of the risks that I've taken over the last year, which I'm sure we'll get into in a minute. But presently, I am the general manager at Sbarro at the Haywood Mall here in Greenville, South Carolina, which is the Haywood Mall being the largest mall in the state of South Carolina, which is a nice little factoid. Mm-hmm. If you check out my LinkedIn, you'll see I describe myself as a trailblazer. Last summer, I took a 90-day state road trip around the lower continental United States and invited the world to join me through social media. Mm-hmm. It was awesome. It was the coolest thing ever. I made a lot of friends around the country, learned a lot about the power of social media, various social mediums. It was a tremendous social experiment. And, once a trailblazer, always a trailblazer. It's in my blood. And, I'm sure we'll get into this as well, that who knows what the future holds, but perhaps we'll get out and do some more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, that's one of the things that we are going to talk about today is that trailblazing piece. So why don't we just get right into that? Talk us through the process of developing, hashtag Team Strub and how all that came together.
Great. Yeah. I lived in Binghamton for 11 years mm-hmm. and worked a variety of different communications-related jobs. A lot of people know me from my years at the Press and Sun Bulletin.
Yep.
I had a column there for about a year and did some photojournalism and copy editing and headline writing, etc. From there in social commerce space, where I worked on the DealChicken.com product. So some of you may still be receiving those emails. Sorry about that. Did a year of that, and then I jumped to a little advertising agency in downtown Binghamton called Ad Elements with the wonderful Blodgett family and company at the Lackawanna train station. Spent over a year there and sort of took a combination, and we'll talk more about this too, took all the different skill sets that I developed through those various jobs. Yep. And sprinkled in some of the inspiration and some of the determination that I learned at, of course, Binghamton University.
Right.
And decided to make something of it, and decided that, at age 28, it was time to get out and see the country and take a risk and be bold and do a lot of the things that most people just dream about, which is to get out and see the country, go see the lower 48, experience new things, meet new people, and take risks. And it'd be easy to say that I certainly took some risks.
Well, okay. See, that's that. Now we're gonna jump right into the meat of the matter, because
Great.
This is something that I am very personally and professionally passionate about, and that's taking risks. So many people, I think of Pamela Slim, the writer of Escape from Cubicle Nation, and I think of, maybe not Gary Vaynerchuk, he's a different kind of guy, but Seth Godin, okay? I always bring up Seth Godin, I always will bring up Seth Godin, because he always talks about sort of the lizard brain, the Stephen Pressfield War on Art lizard brain, and how that holds us back from taking meaningful risks, that the world of the internet right now, that guys like Cory Doctorow and Martin Ford and those types of folks who are really visionary thinkers talk about how, the internet has allowed us to take all kinds of risks, but we're all sort of still operating in industrial revolution mindset thinking. I'm going to go work. It's going to be 40 years later. I'm going to get a watch, and then they're going to let me go. And you sort of upended that, right?
Oh, yeah. And that sort of thinking is sad to me. I can't think of a better way to put it. It's just sad. I never intend to spend 40 years doing any one thing. Right. No matter how good it is. And I'd say that the internet has really opened at least my eyes to the opportunities and the possibilities that are out there, and probably directly contributed to my determination and dreams to get out there, because this open sharing of information has really allowed anyone, you and I included, of course, to see what possibilities are out there, and perhaps more importantly, see how an individual in 2015, 2014 can have a broader impact that they may not have been able to see in the the 70s or the 80s.
Right.
That the power of the individual is really an overarching theme here with social media. That it's not about AT&T and Time Warner, and you don't have to necessarily lead a corporation or a mega corporation to make a difference and to make an impact.
Right.
And part of the reason I think you and I get along so well, and I appreciated your disclosure, was that we share a lot of these ideas. And, although our entrepreneurial paths have gone in different directions, we share a lot of these great principles. And that's why I'm so excited to chat here with you and your listeners here today.
Absolutely. Well, you talk about the power of the individual, and I often tell people who maybe are in more traditional fields than I am, or who had a different, well, maybe not a different, but it sort of came from a more traditional background, that all the tools are to do what I do, and to build human services consulting and training, and to do this podcast as part of it, and all the other future projects that I'll be involved in. I tell people, listen, 40 years ago, I couldn't have done any of this. The barriers to entry, which is the term that's used in business, the barriers to entry were way too high. I mean, they were way too high. And so, for you, yes, there's been people who have, Jack Kerouac on forward, who have gone on the road, or Henry David Thoreau, who have gotten away from it all. But talk to me about how #Team Strub was different. How was that different than maybe Steve Jobs journeying to India in the 60s post-college to find himself? How is that different?
Well, look, I mean, when you talk about barriers to entry, I mean, the barrier to entry for anyone these days is picking a screen name and a password, right, and typing it in.
Yep.
And in the 60s, and these different tales you're telling, it was impossible to spread the word about your journey, or to gain social momentum, or to gain attention on a national scale, if you weren't the New York Times or the Washington, if you weren't tuned into one of these enormous media companies,
right?
So for a business like yours, to be able to set your own goals and achieve limitless possibilities is really only limited now by sometimes the technology that you have at your disposal. That you talked about, purchasing a new microphone and a new computer or whatever it is, and that's all you need.
That's it. Yeah, I got everything I needed for this podcast for like under $500.
Yeah, and that's incredible. That's truly incredible that the phone that I'm talking to you on right now was able to bring thousands and thousands of people along on a journey around the United States. I mean, this is a 2-inch by 4-inch piece of metal that is connected to the entire world.
Right.
And everyone has one of these, or seemingly everyone has a device like this, or 2 or 3 or 4 at their disposal, to not just consume information, which so many of us, or your, as you described it, a traditional mindset, tend to do on a daily basis. But I try and take the opposite approach. I want to create content. I want to create something magical that people can follow along with. I want to be that person that people are not just following and watching, but you take the next step and you're able to engage and communicate. And what was so special about last year's journey was that communication was such a huge part of it, that I wasn't just out there on my own. I was out there with thousands and thousands of people, and through Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, those people who were watching were really participating, and they helped me make my journey better. And I hope that in some ways, I inspired at least some people to make their own personal journeys better.
Right.
When you travel to Fargo, North Dakota, or any you could pick any city that I went to, Albuquerque, or Portland, or whatever it is, and you don't know anybody or anything, but you have a phone in your hand with Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and Facebook.
Oh yeah.
Now you have this whole wealth of knowledge at your disposal, and if you know how to use those tools to your advantage, the possibilities are limitless.
Right. Well, I remember seeing I remember following you, on Facebook and on Twitter, and I remember, oh gosh, what was it? The selfie stick. That was the first time.
Sure.
That was the first time I ever saw the selfie stick. I'll be honest. Maybe I'm not as far ahead as I think I should be, but that was the first time I ever saw the selfie stick, like in use, with the camera. And I looked at my wife and I said, this kid's, he's working on something. He's working on something here.
Well, I'll have to drop another full disclosure here that after the conclusion of the trip, I was in contact with the creators of the QuickPod, and have received some compensation since then for creating some content during their holiday push.
Yeah.
So we'll get that out of the way.
Yeah.
But the selfie stick was really, it's a great conversation piece when you're on the road. But more importantly than that, I found that it allowed me to create something unique and create, and it's becoming less and less unique as selfie sticks become more ubiquitous. But it allowed me to distinguish the product that I was creating on a daily basis, that I wasn't just reaching out with my hand and taking your traditional selfie,
right.
That you could really see something individualized and personalized that really set me apart and set my content apart. And it was really my own twist on being able to share my story with the world.
Absolutely. Well, you said no to duck lips. So my wife, who's a professional photographer, appreciates that. One of the things I'd like to push back on you a little bit is this idea of creation versus consumption, and this is sort of a little bit off our script here, but let's go into this area a little bit because it's a conversation, and we can go off script if we want. I've had a realization over the last couple of years of building this business and talking to people, both in traditional areas and, people who are deep inside social media, way deeper than I'm, in right now, if that's to be believed. But one of the concerns is that there's either too much noise out there being created by too few people, or there's not enough people engaged in the creation part and too many people engaged in the consumption part. And there's a sort of philosophical wrangling that's going on right now. I think of Don Tapscott, when I think of this, or, I think of Mitch Joel, maybe, the marketer there. And there's this sort of psychological / philosophical wrangling that's going on about, how many people are going to create versus how many people are going to consume. And as things like automated cars come online, like what are you going to watch in your Google car? You're not going to watch just Netflix in your Google car, right? You're going to watch something else. So this idea of creation versus consumption, you're on the cutting edge of the creation business. What do you think of this? Like, where do you land? Do you think that more people should be creating versus consuming, or do you think, hey, the cream will always rise to the top, and we don't really have to worry about it too much?
Let me answer that bluntly. I think that everyone should be creating. And, it's become more and more competitive in the social space as to what is being consumed. Mm-hmm. And just like any good market, the more content that's created, the more competitive that space is going to be, and the better everyone's experiences are going to end up. Right. So by having an infinite amount of material out there on YouTube and Instagram, it's going to be up to those platforms to develop ways to ensure that the users of those platforms are receiving the highest quality content that they can find. So, For example, everyone's on Facebook, right? Everyone always wants to start the conversation with Facebook, but there's a lot of criticism out there on Facebook about algorithms and the way information is delivered, and people aren't seeing, your brand people aren't seeing what I'm putting out there, and yada yada yada. And you know what, the more I've thought about it, and the more time I've spent away from an advertising agency, the more you realize that's good. I mean, people want to see content that is relevant to them, that's engaging and interesting. And the best brands out there are the ones that are going to roll with that and, continue to learn and improve. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, that's going to continue to blur the already blurred lines between...
Careful, you can't say that.
between content and advertising.
Right, yeah. You might have to pay Marvin Gaye's family. Careful. Careful.
Is that what I'm not allowed to say?
You're not allowed to say that, yeah. Well, you can't hum the lyrics.
Yeah, so my point is, as you see, for example, I was watching Saturday Night Live last week.
Right.
And everyone loves Saturday Night Live. It's been around decades, one of the great shows of all time. And, the first bit after the monologue is, it's a skit about American Express. It's a play off of an American Express commercial.
Right.
And you're like, oh, this is hilarious. There's Chris Hemsworth. Oh, this is great. And then they cut to commercial, and what comes on next? It's an American Express commercial.
It's American Express.
And you're like, wait, what just happened? Like, what is going on in my brain? And you realize that those lines that are already blurred are just disappearing.
Right.
That product placement is going to become more and more ubiquitous, and there's nothing really you can do about it as a consumer but hang on for the ride.
Right.
Because these brands that are achieving these cross promotions and that are implementing their ideas into the content that you believe is so pure and so wonderful are going to be the ones winning the battle.
Right.
As the years go by.
Well, and it's great that you talked about you're going down the road of individualization, right? I mean, in marketing, like that's the road, and we're going to get back to Team Strub in a minute, but that's the road that you're going down, right? Is individualization of content. I mean, truly individualization, and that's really scary if you're a marketer. That's hilariously frightening. I mean, that's like the apocalypse, because how do you, particularly when you come out of, again, industrial revolution. I build in mass, right? The reason that Howdy Doody existed back in the 50s and the 40s, 50s, in the 50s and 60s was to sell cereal. It was to sell Sugar Puff corn cereal. But when that doesn't matter anymore, and when you've got what's individualized for me is not going to be individualized for Chris Strub, and what's individualized for Chris Strub is not going to be individualized for, the guy in the apartment, 2 doors down and 1 door over. Like, how do you market to something that granular? How do you make a brand stand out? Like that American Express ad. I like that you brought that up, because you're right. That's the perfect juxtaposition there. Did American Express know that Saturday Night Live was going to run that? I would hope so. I would hope there was. And I suspect they did. And did they plan to put that there? Yes, I would hope so. I would hope that they would be planful. But that's still, that box called television that's in your house, that's still for a mass audience.
It is. But at the same time, I would make the point that many, many people are sitting there on Twitter,
right,
watching along. And as soon as SNL starts, that's when I'm sure the American Express cross promotion starts, on Twitter,
right?
And you're looking, and you pull up your Twitter feed, which again, you think of the same way you would and this is good for Twitter, because you think of it as a pure medium that you're only seeing the content that you subscribe to,
right?
But of course, that's no longer the case,
right?
That everyone now opens up their Twitter, and the second tweet that they see is
a promoted tweet.
Is promoted tweet, and you're like, oh well, great, here we go.
Great,
yeah. And so it's a constant battle from a consumer perspective to look out for mediums that you continue to believe are pure and only delivering you the best content. And that's been, when I was with Ad Elements, 2011, or not or not that early, but 2012, 2013, people started to catch on. Oh, Facebook is really just advertising to me. I'm going to move to Twitter.
Right.
And now Twitter is starting to advertise to you. So where do we stand now? It's middle of March 2015.
Yeah.
Now we're jumping to Snapchat.
Snapchat, yep.
Okay, now Snapchat is not advertising to me. That all I'm getting on Snapchat is, barrier-free, advertising-free content from my friends.
Right.
But of course,
you
and I know a lot better that is not true. That they've now introduced Discover,
right?
Which, again, what they're doing there is blurring the line between content that you believe to be valuable to you and advertising.
Right. Well, and how are they going to, this gets back to the age old question of how do you monetize the platform? How do you monetize the platform? How do you monetize your user base? How do you move from a freemium model into a paid model? And, this is a granular discussion that would take us a longer time to get into, but how do you monetize that platform and all that? One last thing before we move, and this really does. I guess this relates into Team Strub. It does, because you become a celebrity. You've become a celebrity in your time. There's this podcast. You did another interview. I see some write ups on you. I mean, you're becoming a micro celebrity, but a celebrity nonetheless. So let's talk about this idea of micro celebrity. When PewDiePie or whoever on Twitter, or not even Twitter, I'm sorry, on Vine, can get a deal with X brand to promote their brand or promote the content from their brand in either a YouTube video or a 6-second Vine video. But my wife, who's my age, we're going to be 36 this year, we're not totally out of touch. I had never heard of PewDiePie before I read the article in LinkedIn about him. And I went and I researched him and looked up some of his YouTube videos and that kind of stuff, but I had no idea. How do you handle, so I guess my question comes down to two. Number one, what are your thoughts on micro celebrity? And then how do you handle being a micro celebrity? Because I can't be the only person you've been talking to.
It's always just you and me.
It's always, yeah, all right. You make me feel good. That's good.
Listen, it's, first of all, I appreciate your kind words. It's incredible to me that anyone would even think of me that way. Now, in terms of quote unquote becoming a micro celebrity, you think of it the same way you might an artist or a singer. That it's an incredibly difficult field to break into. Right. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's fun and it's exciting, and a lot of people do want to do it. There's millions of people out there in Vine who would love to be the Gabby Show, or who would love to be Jesse Smiles. That they want to work their way up and have millions of followers. And in many ways, it's an extremely competitive space, and that's why you see so many hashtags and like for like and all that garbage. Mm-hmm. The challenge out there, for me specifically, and here you go, I'll tie it back into what I did last summer, so we can get back on track. But the challenge for me and what I attempted to do last summer was solve the puzzle and create something that was so unique and so incredible, and so in tune with the desires out there on social media that I could crack the code. I was like, what sort of content would be granular enough, to use your terminology, to relate to an extremely broad audience, but also have that easily digestible mass appeal. And Seeing the Country was my answer. And it was great. It was so much fun. I can't even tell you. And of course, I don't have to tell you, but for your listeners, I mean, oh my goodness, just the feeling of, once you build up the courage to leave your job, and to take a risk, there's nothing like that. There's no feeling in the world. There's no promotion you can get. There's no raise. There's no, we're giving you an extra week of vacation this year. None of that compares at all to the feeling of being able to go out there and own your life and do what you want to do and have fun and enjoy it.
Right.
And all of those great feelings that you have by doing something like that are multiplied by the power of social media.
Yep.
If you're able to use those tools to involve others in your journey.
Right.
So that's what I tried to do. That's what was so socially intoxicating about the journey last summer.
Right.
Was hearing from people around the country and even around the world who were tuned in and watching as I was traveling.
Right.
And we can nitpick and pull apart what I did right versus what I did wrong. And
well, we're gonna do a little bit of that, but I mean,
okay.
Well, let's nitpick and pull apart. What do you feel you did really well? And this gets into campaign building, right? What do you feel you did well in your campaign, and what do you feel didn't quite hit the mark on that?
Start with the positives.
Yeah, let's start with the positives. We always want to begin on a positive note. Always begin with the positives.
Listen, I mean, and no matter how you break it down, I had the greatest time of my life. No one could ever take it away from me. It was
absolutely
unbelievable. It was the coolest thing ever. And I am so extremely, overwhelmingly appreciative of everyone who supported me in any way. We sold T-shirts along the way, both online, and I sold some in person.
Yep.
And it was, to see anyone want to buy a shirt to support you and what you're doing, just even one person, even my mom and dad,
right.
Means the world to you.
Yeah.
And then to see a stranger do it, see someone who you've never met before buy into the idea of personal freedom and travel. Oh my goodness, it was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, I need to mention as well that the trip was affiliated with Pay Away the Layaway,
right?
Which is an unbelievably wonderful charity started by my friend and former RA at Binghamton University.
Shout out to RAs.
Shout out to RAs.
That's right.
Lee Karshower. He's originally from Goshen. He lives in New York City now.
Yep.
Really just the kindest person you could ever meet. And who knows, maybe we can get an Earbud U interview with Lee going.
Oh yeah,
in months to come.
Yeah.
What a wonderful guy. There was some criticism of me and my journey on various social mediums. I'm sure you're familiar with BC Voice,
right? Yep.
The wonderful place that is BC Voice.
Yep.
And then I did an AMA on Reddit. And when you talk about transparency
yep.
on social media, which is really the greatest thing that social media can offer, is transparency.
Oh yeah.
There were some deserved criticisms of the way that I handled the financial aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the donation factor, and it wasn't 100% clear what percentage of the money from the shirts that I was selling was going to the charity. And I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I heard it all. I've shed tears over it. It hits me hard when people take shots at me personally like that. And we're not wearing football helmets here. We're still all people,
right?
And unfortunately, I had no experience quitting my job, traveling around the country, and selling T-shirts at the same time, and doing all these things. So, the shirts were sold with a portion of the proceeds going to the charity,
mm-hmm.
Which is what it said on the website. It was what I told everyone in person, and that's how it went down. Mm-hmm. That I sold somewhere around, I don't even remember, 150 shirts or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up at the end of the summer making $1,000 donation. to pay away the layaway,
right?
Which was great. It was
great,
wonderful.
yeah.
Lee was incredibly appreciative. I told people around the United States about the charity. I mentioned it in all of the various interviews that I did. I actually spoke with Bob Joseph of Binghamton Now.
Yep, I love Bob Joseph. I listen to him on a semi-regular basis.
I love Bob Joseph. And he actually reached out to me, called a diner that I was eating at with my aunt and my cousin in Utah, and we were able to connect when I made it up to Montana. I had a piece in the Green Bay Press Gazette written by my good friend Doug Schneider, who is now actually a correspondent for USA Today for the state of Wisconsin, which is just incredible.
Nice.
You know, and was able to spread awareness and get the word out about Pay Away the Layaway. And of course, you know, when December rolled around, I was able to actually pay off some layaways here over in Easley, South Carolina, get on the news there and spread the word and help raise funds for Lee's incredible venture.
Good.
That way. So, you know, the biggest criticism of me, and I know I'm rambling here, and I apologize,
but you know, you have to put in the backstory. You know, we gotta get that too.
Yeah, and I know you know all this, but I'm trying to make sure it's all clear to the readers.
Absolutely.
You know, I sold T-shirts on my website. I sold some T-shirts out of the trunk of my car along the way, and there was some criticism about the split of the money that went to the charity versus went to support my travels, which were not free, by the way.
No.
And so, you know, I addressed those concerns. I am at peace with it. You know, I made a very significant contribution to Pay Away the Layaway, both financially and emotionally, throughout the summer. And I'm at peace with it. And I hope that everyone listening or getting behind their keyboard anonymously on BC Voice is, you know, as brave or courageous enough. And I encourage any of them to make $1,000 donation and match what I did for that charity as well. Yep.
Okay. Well, you know, whenever you take a risk, you know, you can never sort of predict what's going to happen. That's why they call them risks. You know, you can never predict what's going to happen. You can never predict how it's going to fall out. And I did read your long post that you put on Facebook around sort of what happened with Pay Away the Layaway and what happened with some other things and how you handled the money and stuff like that. And while I wasn't necessarily specifically going to get into that, you're right. I mean, we're people, you know, and people want to be dealt with honestly, right? And they want that transparency and they want that sense of accountability. And I think, you know, I'm very much worried about when I worry about social media. One of the downsides, one of the dark sides that I worry about is this inability to have grace and forgive. And we see this with big things, like big national things, the racial issues particularly. And this will date this program recording, but you know, the OSU students, you know, and they're chanting, or Ferguson, Missouri. Like, we have an inability on social. We have a very strong ability to react instantly, like we're on it. I mean, bam, we see something that violates our senses or violates our sensibilities, and bam, we go right on Twitter. You know, we're really good at that. But the ability to then step back and forgive, or to extend grace to people. Now, part of that comes from my Christian belief system, but it also comes from just wanting to be a good human being, you know, and allowing that people make mistakes and they don't always get it 100%. And I talked with another guest of mine also as well this season. But this idea of grace and forgiveness is something that's really been driving me lately, particularly when I look at things on social media, because there seems to be a lack of it. It's almost like there's the well, you're with the gods in the arena, right? And they don't take prisoners, you know. So
sure.
So you know, I read your thing on Facebook, and I think it was really well written, and you know, I mean, you said what you needed to say, you know.
Look, I am at peace with the way that last year's journey went, in every way. You know, I'm young. I'm still young.
Yeah.
You know, and decided to take a risk, and maybe necessarily didn't think it through as much as I should have from a financial perspective before I went. But I can assure you that I'm not exactly sitting here in South Carolina bathing in, bathtubs of $100 bills.
Yeah. No.
I incurred a lot of personal debt from this journey, and the aftermath of it, not having a place to go back to work, not having a lease for an apartment, made the not difficult, but the endearing choice of moving to South Carolina because I fell in love with it here, and got the job with Sbarro,
Right.
which has been great, helped me get back on my feet financially. But I hope that people don't get the impression that I somehow departed with a silver spoon in my mouth. I spent a year and a half, and anyone who's read about the journey is familiar with this concept that I was actually going to go in 2013 and realized that I needed to spend some time saving up some money to be able to go to fund this trip on my own.
Right.
So it's not, and anyone who knows me personally too knows that I'm not extremely well off, that I work very hard for everything that I have. And, I take a lot of pride in who I am and put my name on everything that I do. My seventh grade math teacher said something along those lines once, and ever since then, that's always stuck with me, that if you put your name on something you do, you better believe in it 100%. And,
Yeah.
I've never been one to shy away from difficult questions or concerns that people have, and I'm not trying to hide anything. I know that it was a significant concern for a lot of people out there.
Right.
I hope that anyone listening to this podcast knows that I'm willing to answer any and all questions. I'm not trying to dodge anything.
Yeah.
I know you weren't trying to. I know this wasn't even part of the script, but it wouldn't be fair for me to only tell part of the story. And life is not always all fun and games, and neither was last year's journey.
Right.
But the important part is learning from your experiences and being able to figure out, what happens next and where do you go and what do you do? And I think about that every day, that, quitting your job and taking a trip like this is like opening Pandora's box.
Oh yeah. You never know what you're going to get. You just don't. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah. And when you talk about the concept of a micro celebrity, you open yourself up to criticism, and
Right.
I'm fine with that. I'm used to it. Having lived in the public eye for years, and I'm sure you've received criticism about some of your work as well.
Oh yeah, that's why I tell people that's why I've got the blog. That's why I got the blog. So you can take your shots at me, and guess what? It's a two-way communication medium, so I get to take my shots at you, and that's kind of how it goes. It's a two-way communication medium, and at the end of the day, we all go home. I mean, we do. We all go home. So
yeah,
we can't.
And so, to sum it up, I would say that last year's trip really was my attempt to enter that micro, or as you described it, micro celebrity space.
Yeah.
And
there may be too many micros there.
it's okay.
That's all right. Okay.
That it was obviously a risk, and with any risk can come consequences.
Yep.
And I was thrashed on social media because of it. I was absolutely crushed, and I've made peace with it. I've said my piece, and it's perfectly fair.
Yeah.
It's perfectly fair.
Okay.
But I'm always here to answer questions. That's what social media to me is all about. Is anyone who wants to talk to me can.
Right.
When you hey, I want to do an interview with your buddy, I'm like, oh, hell yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
I'm always down.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's
no one. The thing is, though, no one ever said it would be easy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That these conversations are tough, and taking risks are tough, and I'm sure you've had a lot of introspective thoughts about your career path as well, and what could you have done differently? What can you do better, or whatever? And
oh my gosh, yeah.
To me, that's what life is all about.
Oh yeah.
That for better or for worse, you go in a direction, and then you look back and say, well, that was cool. What can I do better? What areas can I improve? How can I make myself a better person? And what happens next?
Well, it's about having the courage to commit, Chris. Like it's about having that courage to commit. And you're right. The second you, and I have a background in the fine arts, and I put together art shows in the past and that kind of stuff. And so one of the things that drives me is that background where the second you create something, you put it in the world and you open yourself up to criticism. And it doesn't, and most artists are kind of okay with that. But now we've sort of opened up that door for everybody to be an artist, which is to kind of close the loop. Why I think there'll always be more content creators than there will be, or sorry, content consumers than there will be content creators, And so, so that kind of closes the loop on that, because it does take it takes a thick skin to be able to handle the criticism, but it also takes a thick skin to be able to know that, I've handled the criticism and I've done the best I can, and now I'm going to move on. You all can stay back there and continue to gnaw on that if you want, but I got to move on. And, so, speaking of moving on, so I know, you have some next steps in line, and there's some other things that you want to do. And we've covered a lot of the things sort of in a roundabout way that I wanted to talk about. But, one of the things that I'd really like to talk about is sort of what your next steps are. What's your next step in your journey? Are you going to write a book? Are you going to put together a play? Are you going to get out on the road again and write a book on the road? I mean, how are you going to integrate all of this into your next project? Because I look at your life and my life and anybody who's in our generation as being a series of projects rather than a series of careers.
Sure.
So right now you may be working at a Sbarro, and but it doesn't matter, because that's just a project that you're working on in collaboration with a giant corporation. Yeah, it's a giant corporation, but you're in collaboration with them. And when you stop being in collaboration, or when the collaboration no longer works, then you go find another one. So what is the next step in your series of projects that you want to do? What's the next project for you?
Well, I'm going to answer that two separate ways. First off, my current vocation, Sbarro, and no matter what happens, at any point in my life, any vocation that I've always taken on, I always approach it with the same sense of responsibility, the same sense of ambition, and the same sense of determination that I think characterizes me as an individual.
Yeah.
I listened to a podcast with a couple of professional wrestlers, actually. It was an interview with CM Punk.
Oh, yeah.
Where you may have heard of this one.
Yes.
And the one thing that really stuck out that CM Punk said was that he did not want to be defined by his job, that he wants to be defined by who he is as an individual. And that has really also resonated with me, that, I do my job now at Sbarro, with every bit of ambition and determination, and I want to be the absolute best. I want to run the company. I want to, blow the doors off of all of the notions that they have, and make everything as perfect as it can be.
Yep.
And I took that same approach at Ad Elements, with the way that we handled, traditional and non-traditional campaigns. I took that same approach with Deal Chicken, that, you question everything.
Yeah.
You say, why can't we do this? Why can't we do that?
Right.
And at the Press and Sun Bulletin, it was the exact same way. When people told me that when my boss's boss told me that I couldn't be a columnist because I was too young, I said, well, why?
Right.
My writing is good. I'm telling a good story. So why, because of the conventions that are in place, are we shutting down something that is working and that people are enjoying just because you think that the conventional notions say that it should be this way?
Right.
And I approach every moment of my life in that way. Mm-hmm. That why do things have to always be the way that they are?
Right.
And it's a great pervasive theme through a lot of inspirational stories. But to get back to your original question,
what's next?
What happens next?
What happens next?
When I moved to Greenville, I wrote a nice post on Facebook. sort of promising that this apartment that I'm actually pacing back and forth in right now would be the spot where I would write a book. Mm-hmm. And I spent more hours than I would like to admit writing 4 or 5 pages and then deleting everything,
right?
Or writing 4 or 5 pages and saving it and then starting something new. And at this point in my life, I don't think that
it's hard to write a book. By the way, I will say that it is hard. I'm in the process of doing one right now. It's hard.
And you know what? I think part of my trepidation about writing about Team Strub is that there's 2 parts to it. One, it was imperfect in a lot of ways that we covered maybe too extensively a few minutes ago. Mm-hmm. That it really wasn't what I intended it to be when I set out.
Right.
Although that's nobody's fault but mine. And 2, that the journey isn't complete. That there's more to be written. That I'm 29 years old, and for all the cool stuff that I did last summer, all the cities that I visited, all the people that I met, there's infinitely more opportunities out there. Mm-hmm. And that if I'm going to sit here and write, I'm going to shut myself off from opportunities that are out there now.
Okay.
I'm not. I'm a single guy, so I don't have a girlfriend or a wife or kids or anything like that. And
right. Chris is available, ladies. He is available. He's available right now. He's
let's shut the podcast off now. We're all done.
We're all done. We're all finished here.
But you see what I'm getting at
here.
That there's so much more to be done. You put it really, really well that life is a series of journeys. Mm-hmm. And I love the way you approach your career that way.
Yeah.
That you have a lot of steps laid out, and of course I'm subscribed and looking forward to what's happening next with Jesan, and I would hope that maybe from this podcast or from creeping on my Instagram or mm-hmm. following me on Twitter or whatever it is, that people might follow along with me, and that when I'm ready to divulge what may be next in my career, that people will be there to follow and support me as they did last summer. So I don't have any big groundbreaking announcements today,
right?
But I'm an ambitious guy, and like I said a minute ago, once you open Pandora's box, once you take a trip or you do anything, that takes courage and heart and guts, chutzpah, or whatever family-friendly words you want to use. It's very hard to put that back in the cabinet and say, okay, now I'm going to go be a yeoman, and I'm going to go sit at a desk and push papers for 40 hours a week.
For 40 hours a week.
It doesn't work that way.
Yep.
Once you realize and you do something awesome, mm-hmm. all you want to do is go out there and do it again.
And do it again.
I don't want to refer to it like an addiction, but it's like once you experience something incredible, mm-hmm. All you want to do is work towards being able to do something better.
Yep.
And that's where my mindset is every day. How can I work towards doing something better? And I want to make it clear that doing something better does not imply that anything that's done in the future would be necessarily along the same lines of what I did last summer. I love traveling. I'm obviously going to travel in some capacity. We didn't get much to it. Part of what built toward the Team Strub journey last year was a series of actual vacations that I took. Yep. In previous years, I did a little baseball road trip in California and drove to Phoenix, and I've been to Orlando a few times. And,
right.
I did a northeastern trip, mm-hmm. up into the Midwest, and decided last year to blow it all out and just go see everything all at once.
Yeah, go for broke. Yeah.
I'm obviously I'm not done traveling no matter what happens.
Yeah.
But I don't know necessarily what the next big chapter might be.
Well, I mean, like you said, on your LinkedIn profile, it says trailblazer. In the opening to this show, I called you a budding visionary. I called you a darer, a traveler. And I think, I think those words apply. And I look forward to seeing whatever it is you're going to do next. I do. I'm waiting with bated breath. Like literally, I'm pausing right here. I'm waiting.
Yeah, well, I wish I had some sort of major announcement or anything along those lines.
Yeah.
But
sometimes life is a major announcement. Sometimes living life is a major announcement.
Yeah, people don't realize how great an impact and maybe not even great an impact, but the opportunity that they have every single day and the importance of seizing a day. That today's a Monday and it's absolutely gorgeous out. I need to go explore this day, and I need to go breathe in the South Carolina air and go see my new friends down here and enjoy this and love it and breathe it and experience it. And because you never know that, tomorrow is not promised.
Right.
You never know what's going to happen. And that was a big impetus for me last year was, what am I waiting for?
Right.
What am I waiting for? Why am I waiting to get old and to not have the determination to do something like this?
Yep.
And whether or not that determination pushed me a little too hard, whether I wasn't necessarily 100% as prepared as I should have been or took all the proper steps. Oh, well, you know what? I did it, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was freaking awesome. And I would, if I was put in that same exact position, I would do it again in a second. I would have no regrets.
Yep.
Because, I live life with no regrets. I only hope to take the experiences that I've had and learn from them. And to me, life is a journey, a series of journeys, but really is one big journey where you have the opportunity to learn from everything that you've done. Mm-hmm. And I think, when we did our practice call a month ago, I phrased this rather well. We walked through a bit some of my my overall career path, and it's really incredible to feel that you're able to use all of those experiences positively to make something incredible.
Yeah.
And in many ways, that's what I felt like I did last summer, that I took some of those lessons that I learned about communication from the Press and Sun Bulletin and from the wonderful Mary Haupt at Binghamton University. I took some of those lessons that I taught to many of the business owners in the greater Binghamton area about social media and use them to my advantage to be able to share something incredible with the world. And most importantly, I took that never-ending sense of determination that installed in me at Binghamton University. And even further back, in Huntington, where I'm from, on Long Island, with my parents, especially my mom, that never-ending sense of determination, and said, I'm going to go do this.
Yeah.
Whether it's right or wrong or perfect or imperfect, it's my time. I'm going to go. Here we go.
Here we go.
And let's do this. And you know what? That determination, absolutely, not to use another CM Punk reference, but
hey, he's a smart guy.
The fire still burns.
Yeah.
I want to get better, and I'm not done.
Done.
It says it right there on my website that I'm not done.
Yeah.
That whatever the timing is, or whatever company it's with, or whatever it is, the vehicle may change. Although the Strubmobile is still working well, but
that's good.
The proverbial, man, did she survived real well last summer through that Phoenix desert. But the company may change, and boy, I'd love to land somewhere high up at a major corporation, and maybe some big business will benefit from the approach that I bring to their company, but maybe not. Maybe it's an individual journey that continues. And either way, I'm prepared. Good.
Well, you know what? It's good to know that you're prepared. It's good to know that you're ready for whatever that next step is. It's good to know that you're living life, to paraphrase from Fast and Furious, a quarter mile at a time. So, But that's awesome. We covered a lot of the stuff that I wanted to talk about. We talked about sort of, what keeps you going. And I think it's your determination and your drive. And I think we really got that today. And, your inspiration and your persistence. You talked a little bit about your family here at the end. Let's kind of close with that. What does mom and dad think about their baby boy out there driving around the wilds of Montana and Idaho and Wyoming and going on this journey? What kind of feedback did you get from them?
That's a great question. Boy, my mom, God bless her. I don't know how she handled, especially the lead up to it. Mm-hmm. That when I told my parents that I was going to quit my job, I had to do it, unfortunately, over the phone because I was up in Binghamton, but
right.
Told them simultaneously. My parents are divorced, but told them on a conference call together that I wanted to do this. And my dad is like, "Oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm so happy for you. I'm so excited. This is so wonderful. This is so cool." And my dad has been really my biggest fan all along. I talked all the time. We're texting and calling and FaceTiming, and he was there every step of the way. I could meet up with him as part of the journey down in his new home in Florida.
Awesome.
So that was great. I also got to see my mom, sister, and my aunt, and my cousin, and a lot of my grandma, a lot of that family in Kansas City as part of the journey in the first third of the trip. So I'd encourage your readers, if they're interested, we really didn't get into much about the trip itself, but if you go look through my Instagram, just scroll all the way down for a while, and I would recommend, starting from day one.
Yeah.
When I left Binghamton, you can really watch as I make my way around the country, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. It's a photo journey. It's a photo book.
And that really is the best way to experience it. Is go check out Instagram and I mean, you could read my blog and everything, but snooze. You want to see it. So, but to answer your question, number one fan and mom has just been such an incredible blessing to have her there, not just as part of the journey. I mean, when I got to see her, I cried. When she left, I cried even more. But she was incredibly super nervous about the physical aspect of it. That I was going to go drive 15,000 miles around the country by myself. But once I made it through the first three states and into the Midwest and then down into Kentucky, she was like, "Oh my God, this is so cool. Like, I'm never going to doubt you again." And now she's asking me those same questions now, what's next? What are you going to do? Where are you going to go next? You're going to go do Europe next, that, she's a believer now, and, I love my mom more than anything in the world. And the most important thing, that I saw was that never one time did she tell me that she didn't want me to do it.
Good. Yeah.
And if she had said, "Chris, I don't want you to do this," I wouldn't have gone.
Right.
That she's the one person who had veto power, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I'm so blessed to have an incredible support system. My mom, my dad, my sister, my grandma. I stayed at my uncle's cabin in Maine on actually day 2 of the trip, and then after the trip was over, I went back there for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And did some very serious contemplation about life. And that's where I decided to move down here to Greenville.
Right.
And boy, I could talk for hours about this, by the way. But I had it down to Portland, Oregon, or Greenville, South Carolina, and decided to come here, of course. But Portland is wonderful as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, with my family, there's no way I would be here at all.
Yeah.
It was just amazing.
Awesome.
Their support.
Awesome. Well, you know what, Chris? Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Thank you for talking about your journey. Check out Chris, on Instagram. He's right. I mean, that's really the best way to sort of see the entire journey. Follow Chris on Twitter at Chris Strub, all one word. Hashtag Team Strub. If you're looking for information about that, you can look up that hashtag and get a ton of stuff from him on Twitter. Do you want people looking you up on Facebook?
Sure. You can add me on LinkedIn. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And not to give anything away, but I would love for people to add me on Snapchat at Chris Strub.
All right.
That would be fantastic. And I know we're wrapping up, but I want to correct your verbiage there. Instead of following me on Twitter, I want you to talk to me on Twitter. I want you to ask any questions that maybe we didn't cover today, and you can at earbudu as well. But let's keep the conversation going because, we talk for an hour, but I could talk for, as you could tell, probably 6 more hours about this.
Absolutely.
Just give me some water and another sandwich.
Give you water and another avocado sandwich, some more vitamins.
But if you feel inspired, if you have any questions, if you want to know about how you can do something like this, make me your resource. I'm here for you. That's what's so wonderful about this whole social ecosystem is that there are people out there that can be a resource for you, and I want to be one of them. That I love talking to people on Twitter, and hope that some of your listeners can take me up on that.
Absolutely. Well, you know what, Chris? Thank you very much.
All right, buddy. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next with you too, bud. I'll stay tuned.
Thanks, Chris. You have a great day.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I'll talk to you soon.